Rosberg saw the danger before everyone else wanted to admit it. Mercedes had found an engine trick so sharp, so perfectly hidden in the new 2026 rules, that it gave them extra electrical power right when the lap mattered most. Then Ferrari spotted it. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile stepped in, and the trick was banned. But that ban was not the shocking part. The shocking part came after. George Russell lost a race-leading car in Canada. Lando Norris lost power in a Mercedes-powered McLaren at Monaco. Kimi Antonelli's car died from second place in Barcelona, with only 4 laps left. 3 failures. 43 points lost. 1 battery problem haunting the fastest team on the grid. And now Toto Wolff's warning sounds less like frustration, and more like fear. To finish first you have to finish. Because maybe Mercedes did not just lose a loophole. Maybe the ban exposed the real price of their dominance. A power unit fast enough to win, but fragile enough to destroy everything. And the question nobody at Mercedes wants to face is brutally simple. Did the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile stop an unfair trick, or did it reveal that Mercedes had been standing on the edge all along? Subscribe to the channel. Mercedes did not begin 2026 like a team in trouble. They began it like a team that had already solved the sport's newest puzzle. New regulations had arrived. New power units. New electrical demands. New limits on how energy could be used. And while the rest of the grid was still trying to understand the shape of the new era, Mercedes looked frighteningly calm. George Russell won in Australia. Kimi Antonelli won in China. Then Japan. Then Miami. Then Canada. For the first stretch of the season, it looked like Mercedes had built the car everyone else feared. Not just fast over 1 lap. Not just strong in clean air. But complete. Sharp. Efficient. Ruthless. And that is exactly what made the warning so easy to miss. Because when a team is winning, people stop looking for cracks. They look at the trophies. They look at the standings. They look at the confidence in the garage, the clean strategy calls, the way the drivers speak like they trust the car underneath them. But Formula One does not punish only slow teams. Sometimes, it punishes the teams that are fastest, because the fastest teams are usually the ones living closest to the limit. And Mercedes was living right there. Right on the edge. The new 2026 power unit rules changed the game. The car was no longer just about the combustion engine. It was about electrical power, energy recovery, software control, battery temperature, and how perfectly a team could release energy at the right second without breaking the rules or breaking the car. That sounds complicated, but think of it like this. Imagine 2 runners near the finish line. Both are tired. Both are holding something back. But one runner has a hidden burst of energy that can be released for the final few seconds. Not forever. Not for the whole race. Just at the perfect moment. In Formula One, that final burst can decide qualifying. It can decide track position. And track position can decide the whole weekend. That is why the MGUK became so important. The MGUK is the electrical part of the power unit that helps send extra power to the wheels. Under the 2026 rules, that electrical push was massive. But it was also controlled. The cars were supposed to reduce electrical deployment as they approached the timing line, by 50 kilowatts per second. In simple terms, the rules said, you cannot keep blasting maximum electrical power all the way to the line. You have to ease it down. Mercedes and Red Bull found a way around that. According to the source material, they used a permitted software command to trigger the MGUK emergency shutdown mode. But instead of using that emergency function only for a real emergency, the system allowed the normal reduction to be bypassed. The car could keep maximum electrical deployment right up to the line, giving an estimated 50 to 100 kilowatts of extra power for several seconds. That is not a tiny detail. That is the kind of detail that can make a lap look cleaner, stronger, and harder to beat. And here is where the story becomes dangerous. Because Ferrari saw it in Australia. They noticed the trick early. They understood what Mercedes and Red Bull had found. But instead of copying it, Ferrari went to the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile with safety concerns. That choice matters more than it first appears. Because in Formula One, teams usually copy what works. If a rival finds speed, the instinct is simple. Understand it. Recreate it. Improve it. Make it yours. Ferrari did not do that. They chose the regulator. That tells you they did not just see performance. They saw risk. And risk is the word that now follows Mercedes everywhere. At first, the trick looked like clever engineering. The kind of thing championship teams do. Find the gap. Use the wording. Turn an interpretation into lap time. But when the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile stepped in and clarified that the emergency shutdown mode could only be used for genuine technical emergencies, the message was brutal. This advantage is over. Not reduced. Not negotiated. Over. And for Mercedes, that was the first hit? Because if a team has built qualifying performance around a trick, even partly, losing it forces everything to shift. The energy maps change. The timing changes. The feeling of the lap changes. The confidence of the driver changes. A driver might not describe it in software terms. He just feels that the car no longer has the same punch at the exact moment he expected it. And in qualifying, expectation is everything. The lap is not just speed. It is rhythm. It is trust. It is knowing when the power comes, when the car pulls, when the final straight gives you one last chance to steal time from the stopwatch. Take away that last electric shove, and the lap can feel different before the timing screen even confirms it. But that was still only the visible problem. The invisible problem was much deeper. Because the same area of the car that gave Mercedes this early advantage, the electrical system, soon became the area that threatened to wreck their season. Canada changed the mood completely. George Russell was leading. Not fighting for scraps. Not hoping for damage limitation. Leading. Then, on lap 30, the car shut down. Suddenly. Completely. Mercedes traced the failure to the ERS battery module. James Allison described it as catastrophic, with heat damage and distress inside the battery pack. And because damaged lithium battery cells carry fire risk, the failed module could not simply be flown back for instant analysis. It had to be shipped under hazardous goods procedures. That detail is chilling. Because Mercedes lost more than a race that day. They lost immediate access to the evidence. The broken part, the thing that could explain exactly what happened, was trapped in a slow journey back to the United Kingdom. So while the championship moved on, the clearest physical answer was still not available. And that is when a racing problem becomes an engineering nightmare. You can look at telemetry. You can study control logs. You can run simulations. But when the burned, damaged, failed battery is not in front of you, part of the truth is still missing. Russell lost an estimated 25 points in Canada. And Mercedes lost something harder to measure. Certainty. Then came Monaco. This time, the works Mercedes cars finished. But the wider Mercedes power unit family suffered again. Lando Norris, driving a McLaren with Mercedes power, retired on lap 45 after his power unit gave up. Earlier in the weekend, McLaren had already carried out precautionary work on power unit installation and integration. Norris had also lost all power in second practice. That is when the pattern started to look bigger than one car. Because when a Mercedes works car fails, the team can wonder whether the issue is specific to that chassis, that cooling layout, that installation, that exact part. But when a customer car using the same power unit architecture suffers a related failure, the question becomes more serious. Is this not just a Mercedes car problem? Is this a Mercedes power unit problem? And before Mercedes could fully calm that fear, Barcelona delivered the worst possible answer. Kimi Antonelli was running second. He had just overtaken Russell. He was only 4 laps from the finish. Then, at turn 5, the car simply gave up. Antonelli said it clearly. All of a sudden, at the apex of turn 5, the car just gave up. There is something brutal about that phrase. The car just gave up. Not, he made a mistake. Not, he pushed too hard. Not, the strategy failed. The car gave up. For a driver, that is the most powerless kind of defeat. You can fight another driver. You can fight tire wear. You can fight pressure. But when the power unit switches off underneath you, the battle ends without asking permission. Mercedes confirmed another electrical shutdown caused by a battery failure. And James Allison later gave the line that should concern every Mercedes fan. The failures were not identical, but they originated in the same general area of the battery. That means Mercedes was not dealing with one simple broken piece. They were dealing with a family of problems. Different symptoms. Same neighborhood. And that is why this crisis feels so dangerous. Because a single failure can be unlucky. 2 failures can be suspicious. 3 failures, across works and customer cars, begin to look like a warning from the machine itself. The battery was becoming the character nobody could ignore. Not glamorous. Not visible. Not something fans chant about. But decisive. The battery could decide whether Russell's lead became a victory or a retirement. It could decide whether Antonelli extended his championship advantage or watched 18 points disappear. It could decide whether Mercedes' dominance remained real or became fragile. And this is why the Rosberg angle cuts so sharply. Rosberg knows that Mercedes' greatness has always lived in tiny margins. He understands that their best advantages often come from places ordinary viewers never see. Not just wings and tires, but systems, settings, procedures, interpretations, the invisible architecture of performance. That is why a warning about an engine trick feels so meaningful. Because the trick was never just about extra power. It was about mentality. Mercedes found a gray area. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile closed it. Then the same electrical world around that advantage started producing failures that cost real points. Again, the source does not prove the trick caused the failures. That would be too simple, and too careless. But it does show something that may be even more important. Mercedes was chasing maximum electrical performance in a regulation era where the electrical system was already under extreme stress. The line between brilliance and danger was thin. And Mercedes was standing on it. That is the core of Block 1. The team that looked untouchable was never safe. It was fast. It was winning. It was leading. But underneath the victories, the most important part of the car was carrying a question that had not been answered yet. How much stress can this power unit take before the advantage turns against them? And once the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile banned the MGUK trick, that question became impossible to ignore. Because now Mercedes was not only fighting rivals. They were fighting the limits of their own design. Then came the decision that turned a clever advantage into a public controversy. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile closed the door. The emergency shutdown function could not be used as a performance tool anymore. It had to be used for what the name always suggested. A real emergency. A real technical problem. A genuine need to protect the car, the driver, or the system. Not a shortcut to extra qualifying power. Not a way to hold maximum electrical deployment up to the timing line. Not a trick hidden inside the language of the software. And on the surface, that sounds completely logical. Emergency mode should be for emergencies. But Formula 1 is not lived on the surface. Inside a garage, that ruling does not feel like a simple clarification. It feels like a weapon being taken away just as the fight begins. Because Mercedes and Red Bull had already discovered how valuable the loophole could be. The source material says the trick was worth an estimated 50 to 100 kilowatts of extra power for several seconds. That is the kind of advantage that can change the final part of a qualifying lap, especially on a track where the run to the timing line gives the electrical system one last chance to matter. A casual fan might hear that and think, several seconds is nothing. But in Formula 1, several seconds of extra power can echo through an entire weekend. It can improve the lap. The lap can improve grid position. Grid position can protect clean air. Clean air can protect tires. Tires can open strategy. Strategy can decide whether a driver spends Sunday attacking or staring at the rear wing of a rival he should have beaten. That is why this ban mattered. It did not just remove a software trick. It removed a chain of possibilities. And this is where the controversy becomes sharper, because Ferrari's role changes the whole feeling of the story. Ferrari saw the trick early, in Australia. They could have copied it. That is what Formula 1 teams often do when a rival finds performance. They observe. They question. They imitate. They improve. Nobody wants to be the honorable team that loses 2/10 because it refused to explore the gray area. But Ferrari did not copy it. They went to the regulator. And they did it while raising safety concerns. That detail matters because it makes the story harder for Mercedes. If Ferrari had simply complained about performance, Mercedes could have framed it as normal paddock politics. A rival sees an advantage. A rival wants it removed. That is the oldest story in racing. But when the concern is safety, the argument becomes heavier. Because an MGUK is not a decorative part. It is a powerful electrical system connected to the way the car deploys energy, recovers energy, and manages huge forces through the drivetrain. If that system is being forced into an emergency shutdown condition repeatedly, not because something is wrong, but because the team wants performance, then the regulator has to ask a brutal question. What happens when a fake emergency creates a real one? That is the line nobody can ignore. And once that question is asked, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile cannot simply look away. Because if they allow one team to use emergency mode as a lap time tool, then every other team is pressured to do the same. Not because they believe it is safe. Not because they want to. But because Formula 1 punishes anyone who refuses free performance.